Hello, everyone. I am very pleased to welcome Murad, Saint Murad, on my channel. You might know him from his work with Mel from the YouTube channel Islamic Origins, and you will surely know him now for his work on the Quran, as he is working on a new translation, a new English translation of the Quran. And it is a very interesting translation that gives a deep insight into the meaning of the Quran. And so I am very, very pleased to welcome him. Welcome, Murad. Glad to have
Hello,
you.
bonjour, monsieur. My French is is not very good, but I am very pleased to be with you today. You are one of the very few unique researchers that has deeply looked into the Quran and did what was supposed to be done with key concepts. So I'm very happy to be with you today
Oh,
recording this.
wow. Thank you, Murad. I'm flattered. I'm very flattered because of course, I've worked on the Quran for my book, The Great Secret of Islam, but I am absolute. I don't speak Arabic. I only started learning Arabic this year, but I have worked on the Quran for many years with tools like the website Corpus Quran, and also by referring to the work of scholars, specialists that knew Arabic very, very well. But what you say is very, very flattering for me. Thank you, Murad. But let's start our chat with your presentation. Who are you exactly, Murad, and what is it you are doing?
Well, I am a native Arabic speaker, so my mother tongue is Arabic,
Hmm.
and English is my second language. And how I started to be on YouTube uh, very quickly is that I just contacted Mel from Sneakers Corner back in the day. Today, the channel is Islamic Origins.
Hmm.
And I just told him we could talk like for 10 minutes. I just want to correct you on something that you don't know in Arabic. It had to do with with the Sabaic script or something like that. He said,
Hmm.
okay, no problem. And then when we talked, it was like an hour or so. And then he told me, why not record a video together? I told him, okay, just give me one day and we might record something about the Dhul Qarnayn in the Quran. Who was he? Because some Muslims today say he was Qurash, which is Cyrus of Persia,
Hmm.
and I think he is Alexander. He told me, okay, when we recorded that, and I was surprised that it got a very good feedback. So I told him, okay, let's do something maybe about a surah of Al-Fil, which is the surah of Al-Elephant, and so on. And then I said, let's start a YouTube channel. But how I will just segue into what made me want
Hmm.
to translate the Quran is that every time I used to talk with Mel, I used to just quote a verse from the Quran in English. I didn't know any English translation because why would I? I just read it in Arabic. So every time I was surprised how bad these translations were. They were bad to the point that you can't even quote them just to get your point across. Then I said, okay, I can translate just the few critical verses, and that's just it because it's a huge undertaking. But then the more people liked my work, I said, why not translate the Quran, but just create a concordance first? So it's not just any mediocre translation.
Hmm.
So that's
What
what
is
I did, and I will get back to you now to tell me what
Murad?
do you
Just
think.
just tell us what is a concordance?
Well, a concordance is like a dictionary that has every single occurrence of the word in the text, and it's counted. Like, for example, this word is mentioned 4 times in the Quran, and it means this, and these are the passages. It's something like this. And I think of it, if we look at a computer, I think of it, it's like de-assembling a computer completely, and then you look with a magnifying glass at every single component. so that when you put it back together, you can understand everything that was going on. So I was like a surgeon who took the Quran apart and took every single word and
Mm-hmm.
and put it in tables so that I can see what the Mufassirun later misunderstood
Mm-hmm.
or
The
the standard.
Mufassirun, the tradition is to interpreted the Quran. Who wrote the tafseer?
Yes, and
That's
these
what you mean.
tafsirs, they came hundreds of years later. They
Mm-hmm.
came from the Abbasid times, not even from the Umayyad times. So they came from Persia and lands around Persia. Today would be Uzbekistan, stuff like
Mm-hmm.
this. And these people, I can say they hijacked the Quranic meanings, the original Quranic meanings. So that's what I did with my concordance. I tried to go to the original meanings while skipping these tafsirs altogether. Like I didn't open one tafsir at all
Mm-hmm.
while translating.
And this was all. My question is will also have the interest of maybe getting to know you a bit better. You used to be a Muslim. Are you an ex-Muslim, I guess?
Yeah, I'm an ex-Muslim, but I was never like really religious. I was the guy who on a Friday go to the Friday prayer and not consistent also. So I
And
was
so,
just
as a Muslim, did you read the Quran or maybe learn some bits?
I was not a good Muslim myself. So I didn't
Obviously.
learn it when I was young, and I was just very like. And actually, there is a lot of Muslims like me. They're very average. They do not study the Quran by heart
Mhm.
while they're young. So no, it was not really interesting to me when I was young.
But you already had an idea about the Islamic meaning of the Quran, I guess.
Yes, of course. And I used to memorize very few surahs, which are the
Yeah.
small ones, because I
What,
have to pray with them. I have to use
yeah,
those.
what you needed for the prayer. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you still live in a Muslim country, so we won't say any where it is exactly, and this is the reason why I tell our audience you want to remain anonymous, not showing yourself, not saying where you live, of course, because what you do is not allowed, I guess, in a Muslim environment.
Yeah, not at all. This is very risky what I'm doing.
Mhm.
That's why I don't know if I will continue doing this for the longest time. So
Um,
uh, the minute I don't feel very safe, I will just disappear. Uh, but
or emigrate
it's
to a
because
more.
I'm really
Mhm.
enjoying this stuff. I'm enjoying looking at the Quran deeply. I just see myself as someone who is very curious, who wants to know the truth, and that's it.
Mhm.
Like I will tell Muslims, I'm not the bad guy. I'm just a
I,
researcher I'm not a bad guy.
I can relate to that because this is exactly what I did. This is exactly why I worked on Islam and Islam's origin. I look for the truth, such exactly like you, and it was also very interesting. It made me feel like a sort of detective, and uncovering the layers and layers of hidden history, and especially when I worked on the Quran also. And so, as a Muslim and as an ex-Muslim, what version of the Quran did you worked on? Is there a specific Arabic Quran you worked on? And did you also use English translations? What were the English translation, for example, you came across?
You mean when I started translating? I translated the Hafs, the usual one.
The Hafs, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah. Mhm.
because this is the like today people say this is the official one, so no problem. This
And
is
because this
the
is also the most used in the Middle East, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. But
In Northern Africa, they use other versions.
they use Warsh.
Hmm.
So Warsh is very common in Morocco also.
Hmm.
So the English translations that I had just when reading the Arabic, I was reading from Quran.com, the Arabic, to create my concordance. So I just had Sahih International and Mustafa Khattab down, the
Hmm.
clear Quran. I just had them out of curiosity. I wasn't really looking at them. But the more I looked, the more I saw that there are huge problems.
Hmm.
So I then started taking screenshots of these translations of these horrible errors. Um, and then I started showing to people, it's on my channel, like 40 scandals. I call them scandals. These are not
Hmm.
translations.
We'll add a link to your channel and to this video in the description of this video. But what's strange is that those translations were made by Islamic scholars. And so they translated the Islamic text and they sort of falsified it by translating it wrong.
Yeah, I can say that these translations, because they are made by Islamic scholars, they are a problem because they are using the
Mhm.
sin standard Islamic narrative, which came in later. It is post Quran and it's not really related to the Quran. And of course, you know this more than me, how
Mhm.
the Quran is actually detached from Al Tabari, Al Qurtubi, Bukhari, Al Hadith, and this stuff
Mhm.
that came in later.
That's the thing. Actually, we have this text, the Quran. Um, I believe it was ultimately finished under Abdul Malik, maybe a bit later. And but the thing is that its interpretation was made much later by the Mufassirun, by all the traditionists. And this interpretation is what we call the Islamic narrative, the standard Islamic narrative. And nowadays, every Quran is translated and is understood according to this narrative. And what you did is try to go back to the literal meaning of the Arabic text without the use of the Islamic narrative. Is that it?
Yes, exactly. So let's say I will look at a word in the Quran. Let's say the word
Mhm.
nasakha, and this is something that we will bring up after a while. The word
Nasara. Mhm.
nasakha, it's only four times in the Quran, and these four times they do not mean abrogate. So here the doctrine of abrogation falls.
Mhm.
But why did they create the doctrine of abrogation? It's because this is a good gaping hole so that you can actually have a hadith abrogate a Quranic verse. So the problem is not just Quran is,
Mhm.
let's say I want to abrogate a whole Quranic passage, I will use a hadith. And this is something that's it's diabolical. I don't know how a Muslim would accept that a hadith could abrogate the Quran. But this word, as we will see, it does not mean abrogate.
But it's an interesting point because nowadays there are some Muslims who call themselves who are called Quranists, and they want to develop their own interpretation of Islam um, by rejecting the Hadith. And I have an example here of a translation that has been made by a French Islamic scholar, Dr. Al-Ajami. I just bought it recently. And he tried to give us so it's a French translation. It's not an English one, an English one, and he tried to 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 do something independent from the Hadith, so that he would have a sort of more decent version of the Quran, or one that would be more acceptable for our times. But when we really look into it, it still relies heavily on the Islamic interpretation. The very same interpretation he claims to detach from. And that's a thing I have seen with every scientific translator, whether in French or in English. I have worked with Régis Blacher, Régis Blacher translation in French. He was a French academic who did a very, very interesting translation of the Quran in the last century. But I have also worked with A.J. Droog, English translation of the Quran, which is the one I mostly used in my book, in The Great Secret of Islam. It's also a very interesting work, sort of fresh work, but it also relies heavily on the on the Islamic interpretation. For example, when there is the word Rasul, he refers to he automatically refers, maybe he doesn't realize it, but he automatically refers to the Islamic interpretation and translate the word as referring to Muhammad, whereas Rasul means apostle, and it could relate to any apostle. And that's the thing with all these scholars, even the academic, scientific scholars, they are still completely dependent on the Islamic narrative. And this is why your translation is very, very interesting and groundbreaking, because it is independent from the standard Islamic narrative. And also you use this method of systematically using your concordance, which gives your translation a consistency. You use, for example, the exact same meaning for a word for every mention of it. Whereas in the Islamic narrative, a word can be used many times in the Quran with different meanings. And this can even lead to contradictions. I've heard you presenting your work on, I think it was Lloyd de Jong channel. I think it was about the word halal. It was very, very interesting because you said that sometimes it means rightful, but it also has another meaning as lose. And maybe you could develop on this.
Yeah,
Or maybe you have other examples to show us.
the word halal, because they have Sharia law in their head, because these people, they were Persians and they came in later, they have Sharia in their mind. So they say halal means lawful. But what law? There is no law in the Quran. So how can we crack this word? It's very simple. Let's go to the verb form of the word. So ihlil means make it loose. And when you make something loose, it's there, it's free, you can use it. So when we say Ishaq, he made something haram and made something halal, it doesn't mean he made it lawful or unlawful. It means he made it loose, like it's there, it's free, you can use it. And the other word haram, it's prohibited, not forbidden, prohibited. So it takes the Quran to a much simpler meaning, much more primitive meaning, which most likely is the intention of the author.
And do you have other examples of discoveries you made with your new translations, your new translation, excuse me?
Yeah, like almost every single word people are used to reading, it's different in my translation. And I have prepared 3 examples. If you want me to share the PowerPoint now. Okay, so now I will show you only 3 examples of things that are very critical in my translation that are different than any other translation. If we look here, example 1, we have, this is in Surah 2, verse 106. It says, ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها نأتي بخير منها أو مثلها ألم تعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير. This word ننسخ in Surah 2, verse 106, it says, we do not abrogate of a verse or cause it to be forgotten unless we bring something better than it or like it. In any translation, you will find it's saying the same thing. But when I looked at the word nasakha, it
Nasakha.
means make a copy. And since I have my concordance, I now know that the word ayah, it means sign,
Sign.
sign or a wonder. It does not mean a verse. This word verse does not exist in the Quran. It is because they have the Bible in their mind all along, so they say verse. So
Mhm.
here it's saying, as you can see here, we do not transcribe of a sign or make it forgotten. We advance by a more charitable one than it. Of course, my translation is very literal, that's why it sounds weird, but this is because it is ultra literal.
Mhm.
So the signs of God or the wonders, like for example, splitting the sea with Moses, God does not duplicate this sign unless he could make one that is similar or on the same level
Mhm.
or even better. So it doesn't mean abrogate a verse. This is a hoax that comes from the standard Islamic narrative
Mhm.
so that parts of the Quran which are contradictory can abrogate the others,
Mhm.
and a hadith can come in and abrogate parts of the
Exactly.
Quran. So this is
I
example number one. I
As
will
a
ask you what do you
comparison,
think.
I will just read Droge translation of the same verse.
Yeah.
Um, and it translated like this: whatever verse we cancel or cause to be forgotten, we bring a better one than it, or one similar to it. Do you not know that God is powerful over everything? And we see here that he used the word verse, and it completely veil the double meaning of the word. It means sign, and so
Yes,
this
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 word
passage.
is uh, this word is also in the Quran as a sign that you can build. So
Mhm,
this ayah is a sign that you can build. So
mhm,
this is something tangible.
mhm, mhm.
So this is the wonder of God. He can make a copy of it, something exactly the same, or something even better. This
Nice,
has nothing to do
interesting.
with verses.
One could also hypothesize that the the um, the meaning of ayah as being a sign, so a wonder of God, for example, ultimately led to a derived meaning of ayah, also meaning a verse, because the verse tells about the wonder.
Yeah, but this is the assumptions of Muslims later, that every word in the Quran is a sign and a wonder. The Quran doesn't
Mhm.
say this stuff.
Uh, yeah, you could say this. I have two things in mind about this. If
Yeah.
you're okay to discuss it.
Yes.
One is that the word ayah, I've heard scholars and read scholars explaining that it is not actually an Arabic word. It comes from Aramaic. So it comes from a Christian and a biblical, it has a biblical background. And maybe in Aramaic, it has this double meaning also of sign and verse because of the use of the word, meaning at first a sign and then being derived into meaning a verse because the verse tells about the wonder. And I have also another thing in mind. It's another passage of the Quran. So actually, it's in Surah 3. Um, in Surah 3, verse 96, 97. So the English Droge translation says, surely the first house, the first temple, laid down for the people was indeed at Becca. So alternatively, it's Baka. And it's understood within the Islamic tradition as being Mecca, even though it most probably refer to a valley near Jerusalem. So the first house laid down for the temple was indeed that at Becca, blessed and a guidance for the world. In it are clear signs or clear verses, clear ayah, the standing place of Abraham, Makam Ibrahim. And here we have an example of the double meaning of the word. Within the Islamic context, it's understood as referring to signs of the standing place of Abraham. And this is why in Mecca, in the Masjid al-Haram, there is this relic of the footprints of Abraham. And this is supposed to be a wonder, a sign, the very sign that is described in the Quran. But if you look at the text, at the word ayah as meaning verse, it means something completely different. In it are clear verses referring to the standing place of Abraham. And those verses could be the verses of the Torah, the verses explaining that the standing place, the Makam Ibrahim, standing place of Abraham, are actually is actually the Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. And so this is a very interesting example you chose, this word ayah.
Yeah, I want to also say something is that the word ayah could mean the Aramaic atha, but this would require that we change these two dots here and put three dots above. I have no problem, but what are we assuming now? We are assuming the Quran to be 100% Arabic. That's what I have done with this translation.
This
I
is
am
your
giving
method. This is your method. This is what our audience should know. What you
yeah,
did is trying to understand the Quran with the Arabic language only.
exactly, as if the whole concept of Aramaic and Hebrew is a mistake and does not exist.
And so
That's
you
why
did
I'm
not
just
refer to Aramaic or Hebrew. You only use Arabic, and that's one of the difficulties with Islam and the Islamic narrative is that everything in the Quran became Arabic because of Islam. So every word that has a foreign origin, and there are many in the Quran, are now understood as being 100% Arabic because it is the language of God and he's supposed to speak Arabic.
Yeah, but when you look in the Arabic dictionary, you will find that the words which have a foreign origin, they do not have roots in the Arabic dictionary. Like the word Ar-Rahman, which I do not translate in the Arabic in Surah 1. So they are not standing on solid ground. I can see through this as I'm looking into the Arabic dictionary. That's why I have a lot of words untranslated in my translation because they are not Arabic. This is the stage where we will have to go into Aramaic and Hebrew to completely crack the Quran. But you cannot crack it without doing what I have done here, which is assuming it to be 100% Arabic first.
Okay, okay. So for your second example, what have you chosen? Surah 6, verse 145. Okay.
Yeah, it says here, قل لا أجد ما أوحي إلي محرما على طاعم يطعمه إلا أن يكون ميتة أو دما مسفوحا أو لحم خنزير. It says something like, say, I do not find what is being signaled unto me as being prohibited over a feeder who feeds it unless it it is mita, meaning something that's dead, أو دما مسفوحا, meaning blood which is spilled, or لحم خنزير, it's always translated, of course, as the flesh of swine. So لحم will be flesh and خنزير will be swine. But the only problem is these people, relying on the standard Islamic narrative, they did not open the Arabic dictionary to see what is the root for this word. خنزير, the root for it would be خنزة. خنزة means it decomposed. So here it says أو لحم خنزير, meaning or decomposing flesh, not the flesh of swine, as I have it here. Something dead or sloped blood or decomposing flesh. So why do these people say the flesh of swine? Maybe because they are imitating the Jews one way or another. I don't know. This is something that needs further digging. But in Arabic, لحم خنزير means decomposing flesh and
Mhm.
not swine flesh. What do you think of this?
This way, when you translate it with decomposing, it relates much more to biblical commandments. Decomposing flesh is also a Jewish commandment. This type of flesh is not to be consumed. What I am a bit puzzled about is that there are other occurrences of khinziri, of swine, in the Quran. I'm just looking at the website Corpus Quran, and I find four other occurrences, and they are all translated as relating to swine or swines. والخنازرة الخنزيري الخنزيري خنزيرين. And it would be very interesting to have your complete translation and look and to do the concordance work and to look at your concordance work and to look at every other occurrence of the word and what it means when you replace the swine meaning of the Islamic narrative, Islamic interpretation, with your decomposing meaning.
Yes, and also I think not like the worst people in the world, they would not eat decomposing flesh. So what the Quran is saying is kind of logic. The blood that is spilled or something that is dead, that its blood is still trapped in, or flesh that's decomposing. This is something that you don't want to have.
But if you go back to the text here, I think the main lesson is that the original meaning with the decomposed meaning relates much more to a biblical context. This really relates to biblical commandments about not eating decomposed flesh.
Well, this is something that I did not know, and I'm very happy to hear it from you now, because I intentionally did not read the Bible carefully before doing this work, so that I reach this conclusion without knowing the Bible well and without knowing other English translations well,
Mhm,
so that I reach this conclusion without having any influence over me. So this is very nice.
mhm, mhm, mhm. Now, are there other words in the Quran to mean pigs or swine? I think there
Yes,
are others.
there is only one, which is al-qirada wal-khanazir. But again, these two meanings they come from the Arabic dictionary, and there is khinzir and khanzir.
Mhm,
So this very little kasra, you can have it above or below. It could
mhm,
turn it from swine or decomposing, because the he is named as, or it is named as swine because it smells bad. This is the Arabic way of
mhm,
understanding
mhm.
it.
Okay.
That's the idea. And when the Quran calls people pigs and monkeys, it means because they smell bad, and monkeys because they imitate others. That's why when they say apes and pigs, and it's not ape, it's a monkey exactly, because monkey see, monkey do. This
Mhm,
I got this from the Arabic dictionary. This is not my theory, you see?
okay.
That's the idea.
But, there is a verse in Surah 2, verse 173, which also uses this khinziri word, but you surely know it. It says inama harama alaykumu al maitata wal dama wal hahma al khinziri, and so it says only has forbidden to you the dead animals and the blood and flesh of swine. Or if we use your translation, it would mean he has forbidden to use the dead animals and the blood and flesh of decomposed and the decomposed flesh.
Yes.
This makes sense. This is coherent.
Yes, I asked the audience, what do you think is
Mhm.
more coherent? When you read, people always say the Quran makes no sense. Well, maybe it can make sense when we cast aside the standard Islamic narrative, the hadith, the all the stuff that came in later from the Persians who did not know Arabic
Mhm.
or Aramaic or Hebrew.
The question one would ask then is why the traditionists felt the need to introduce this swine meaning.
It might be because I don't know. This is the point where I will be saying my own theories.
Mhm.
So I do not have a solid answer because I am still at a stage of being shocked. I am shocked at my own translation. I still want to read my own translation to see what's going on.
Now, well, I have a question about your work, but I will ask a question relating to this. I will
Yeah.
ask it after your examples.
Okay. Yeah, I will go to the example number 3.
Mhm.
We have here إنهم إن يظهروا عليكم يرجموكم أو يعيدوكم في ملتهم. So here it says, and they, if they back themselves over you, they will, and this is the critical word, يرجموكم. It is always translated as they will stone you. Rajam is understand to
Mhm.
mean stone.
Stone, yeah. This is what Droge translated also. They will stone you.
Yes. But when you create a concordance, you will find that this word rajam
Mhm.
is also the same word mentioned with a shaitan, which is rajim. So the shaitan is rajim, the same as rajam. So the shaitan or the devil is not to be stoned, he is to be expelled.
Mhm.
So here, if you read it in my translation, surely they, if they disclosed over you, will fling you or revert you into their creed. Now, here, fling means push with power. This is the word rajama. It is
Mhm.
not stoning. Why do they say stoning? Because they think of the tradition of Umar ibn al-Khattab, the companion of Muhammad, when he said, I fear that the verse of stoning will be lost and all this stuff. But this is not linguistic. This goes against language.
Mhm.
Rajama and rajim means push hard, fling, expel. Because
Mhm.
here also it's coherent. Fling you or revert you into their creed. So like get you back. So push pull. This is push, this
Mhm.
is pull. This is the Arabic.
Mhm.
What do you think of this one?
It would mean that this whole concept of Satan as being the stone one, the stoned one, um, is a complete invention. Then, if I get your point.
If he is no, the Satan is not to be stoned, he is to be expelled. So this
Yeah,
is
exactly.
correct.
That's the thing. That's the thing. But
Yeah.
I saw that in Islam, Satan is supposed to be stoned. This is why they throw stones at the
Yeah,
during
yeah, this is
the
wrong.
Hajj in Mecca.
Yeah, this is wrong and I think anyone in his clear mind when he sees this sight of people throwing stones at stones by stones, this is not something that is very good. That's not very smart. But here it says yarjumukum, meaning they will fling you, they will push you hard away.
Actually, I
This
know the story of an ex-Muslim who left Islam when he was stoning the big stones in Mecca. He was
yeah,
there with thousands of people throwing his stones, and he had a sort of epiphany, a flash. He wondered, "What am I doing here? What is this? Why am I throwing stones at a big stone for what? For nothing?"
yeah,
And he sort of realized that this whole story of stoning the devil, stoning Satan, that doesn't mean anything.
It is just
Mhm.
based on this mistranslation, this misunderstanding that
Oh,
comes
okay.
from the idea that Omar wanted to stone people, meaning you anchor the person in the ground, half of his body disappeared, and you start throwing stones. But stone in Arabic is hijara, hajar. This is stones,
Mm-hmm.
hijara, small stones. So rajm is just push away, expel. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
stone, like in the city Al-Hishr, the stone
yeah,
city. Hmm. Yeah, okay. There is also a point that should be made here. The ancient practice of stoning people, for ancient, it has survived in Islam. Stoning people, um, if you look at it from the anthropological studies point of view, it's also sort of flinging, expelling the people who is being stoned. Um, when someone is stoned, actually, what happens is that the whole community kills the victim, but no one in the community actually kills it. Everyone
yeah,
kills it, but no one in particular has killed it.
yeah. I
And so this
understand.
is a collective movement of rejection. And so there is a distant connection between stoning and flinging.
Well, the problem, not the problem, but my comment about this is that in an Islamic understanding of stoning,
Mhm,
the person or the victim is in a circle. They circle around him
mhm,
and then they start stoning to death. That's why,
mhm,
also, if you notice in most translations, they will say stone to death. So
mhm,
it's stoning to death is different than pushing someone with force and running after him to push him or expel him away.
mhm,
This
mhm,
is not as violent. This is a different
mhm.
understanding. That's why
Yeah, okay. Mhm,
yeah, that's why I didn't have this word stone at all. It doesn't make sense.
mhm. Well, it's very interesting to go back to the literal meaning of the text. Um, and it leads me to the main question about your work is what's the use of such a work for Quranic studies? And the answer is obvious. It helps us understand the very deep original meaning of the text. I think you'll
Yeah,
agree with this.
yeah. The text, the original Quranic text, is not as violent as it turned to be later. Why did it become so violent? Because Islam had an empire, and now you need violence to survive. You need to say that everyone is a
Mhm.
kafir, everyone is a
This
disbeliever.
is, well, yeah, this
Yeah,
is one way of seeing it. I believe there was also violence in the origins, but a different form of violence, not a state violence, not an administrative violence such as
yeah.
the one
I can
you.
say it was a more primitive
Mhm,
kind of violence than what came in later. And if you
mhm,
look at the progression of Islam throughout history, it keeps getting violent with the ages. So the seventh century is not like six, not like sorry, not like the
mm.
eight, nine, 10. It keeps getting more violent.
More violent, maybe because of the building of huge states. But what we also see in Islam history is um, explosions of violence, of I would call it apocalyptic violence, jihad, for example. Regularly among the centuries, there are people who take the end of times seriously. And lastly, there were the jihadists from Daesh who believed that their fight would trigger the end of times. And they committed desperate violence, believing that their war would trigger the coming of the Mahdi and the end of times. But this is not an a particular case in the history of Islam. Regularly, there has been this kind of violence, but there is also the how would you put it the state violence, the organized violence, violence against the non-Muslims or against the women. Yeah, it's a very very difficult topic. And I think your work is very, very interesting as a way to decode the text, of course. And the next step would be to understand the lessons of it. Since when you decode the text, you get a new insight at what happened during the time of its writing. Um, we just looked at this decomposing or swine thing, and just by looking at it, um, the hypothesis that at the beginning it was only about decomposing flesh and not about swine led us to understand that the original context was much more biblical, much more in phase with the Bible than what the standard Islamic narrative has done with the Quran. And this is something very interesting for scholars who wants to know what actually happened, how Islam formed, how Islam emerged, what happened in the origins. So that's I think your translation will be a fantastic tool for everyone looking to understand the origins of Islam. But it's a second step. You at first made a huge work just to build this tool, and now I would like to 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 get past this huge work and to have your insight on what what you think your translation will 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 permit. For example, when you worked on all these verses on the whole Quran, what did you discover about the Quran? How did it change your opinion on it? What do you think the Quran is now? Now that you have done this translation.
Well, a few key things that I have noticed. If we assume that the Quran is not speaking to Muhammad, which of course this is what I assumed,
Mhm,
then these words when they say people they say O prophet, now it will be say O reader. So say for the person reading the text.
mhm,
If you look at it this way, then I see the Quran as a book or a manual, a combat manual for certain type of believers to go and walk in a certain path which is literal. In the way of Allah, this is a literal way. This is how I see it. And this is to go to somewhere called Al Masjid Al Haram. And there are people intercepting. So this is
mhm,
the word that I see in my translation, intercepting. There are always people there that are cutting the way that you cannot go to Al Masjid Al
mhm,
Haram, which most probably is in Jerusalem. So the Quran is telling you, it's like giving you a combat kit of Kung Fu. He is telling you either be very violent if they started, or be very peaceful if they were good to you, as long as you will get and walk this road, this literal road. And also, I see the Quran as the author of the Quran is sad. This is something I told Lloyd, and he laughed about it, of course, because it is very strange. But the author of the Quran is pessimistic. He is
mhm,
sad, he lost something, and he wants to regain it one way or another. This is what I am seeing from the author. His language is sad, pessimistic, He's not happy. He's
Mhm.
not happy with the humans in general. This author does not like humans in general. He keeps saying that humans are crybabies, humans are very forgetful. Even the word human in the Quran, insan, has the word nasa in it, means forgetful. So
Mhm.
the very word for the human in the Quran means the forgetful one.
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
always forgets, he always rejects, he doesn't want to fight, he just wants to sit. He doesn't want to put effort. He doesn't want to make jihad, meaning he doesn't want to put the effort. He doesn't want to exhaust the enemy. He doesn't want to go in the way of Allah, which is this literal road that you walk. This is what I am seeing from the
Mhm.
Quran, and I want to know your opinion, of course,
I'm very
Murad.
interesting in what you are saying because it's sort of the same thing as I excuse me. It's sort of the same as what I wrote in my book, The Great Secret of Islam. The Quran is about a sort of journey or adventure of believers wanting to take Jerusalem and having all sort of obstacles in their way. They want to take Jerusalem to rebuild the temple and trigger the end of times. I think this is what is literally written in the Quran. And there are people in their way, exactly the same way you described it.
Yes,
Um,
in Arabic it always says يصدون عن طريقة. This word يصد, in football, the
mhm.
goalkeeper, he does this exact word, يصد. He stops the ball from going into the.
The ultimate obstacle. Mhm.
Yeah, so these people, they are making yasud, and I always find the Quran using combat words. These are the words we will use for fighting. So intercept, this is combat. This
Mhm.
is like martial arts. The word qital is combat. This is like martial arts. Again, this is not fight, because
Qital,
fight is.
from Katala, the roots
Yeah,
Katala.
qital,
Mhm.
I have it as combat, not
Mhm.
as fight.
Yeah, it's a combat to death, to the death.
Yes, combat to death.
It's not just a fight or a struggle. It's the idea of fighting to the death.
Yes, because it has qatala
So
in it.
mhm. Yeah, of course. So it can also mean kill or be killed. Um, yeah, and traditionists they reinterpreted this as being the story of Muhammad trying to re-enter Mecca and establish Islam there. It was their way of changing the meaning of the text, but the original meaning was about going to Jerusalem. This is Jerusalem that is described in the Quran. Actually, every mention that the in the Quran that the Islamic narrative interpreted it interpreted it as referring to Mecca also referred to Jerusalem. It's really impressive to realize this. We come to the conclusion that there are two hypotheses and only two when you read the Quran. Either there were two cities in the 7th century that share the exact same characteristics, Mecca and Jerusalem. They were both the place of Abraham, for example. They were both the place of the Hajj. They were both the mother of cities and so on. They were both the city of the Masjid al-Haram and so on. Or, and I think it's a much more probable hypothesis, the Quran only speaks of Jerusalem. It doesn't speak of Mecca. It doesn't speak of Mecca at all. And Mecca is a complete invention, a later invention. And this is something huge because when you really look into it, the most ancient evidence we have for the existence of Mecca is the Quran, should be the Quran, actually. We have absolutely no evidence for Mecca before the Quran. no evidence in ancient sources, no description of Mecca from any witness. And all we have is the Quran and then the Islamic tradition. The Islamic tradition is huge. There is hundreds, thousands, millions maybe of pages describing Mecca and so on. But they are all based on the Quran. And if we look into it, the Quran is not about Mecca. So it's something very, very groundbreaking for Islam. And this is also why, I guess, your work and every critic of the Islamic interpretation of the Quran is not is not very favored in the Muslim world.
Actually, also, if people like the debates that I see online between a Muslim and a Christian, I don't watch that a lot, but when I see it, you will always hear the same thing. A Muslim will say, well, this is only in the context of war. Well, let me tell you that the Quran is only about this context of war because it is in a very certain context about people who want to recapture Jerusalem. And this is what I see throughout the whole Quran. I
Mhm,
don't see a contradiction like this. This works.
mhm. I have another question for you. Um, with your experience now on the Quranic text, do you think the Quranic text to be homogeneous, to be a one text, you know? Or have you remarked that there are different types of text, different genres in the Quran? Is it remarkable when you work on the Arabic text?
I think there are two authors and only two, not three, not four, and not one. Of course, it's not one because the person who wrote Surah 2 has nothing to do with the person who wrote Surah 114. The very style is different. The
Mhm,
style of the writer who wrote the last surahs is very poetic and cares more about poetry than about the meaning.
mhm,
But
mhm,
the guy who wrote Surah 2 and Surah 3, he is more about law, he is more combat like than
mhm.
the person who wrote the final parts of the Quran.
Okay.
So you can say that Mecca and Medina phases, this of course comes from the standard Islamic narrative, but maybe the more original context is that there were two authors, not two
Mhm.
places,
So
you
what
know,
you're saying is, if from
not two phases.
a native speaker point of view, an Arabic speaker point of view, you see really two genres, two types of writings in the Quran, which leads to the hypothesis of two phases, and
No,
so
two
which led
authors,
to
two
mhm,
authors, not two phases.
two authors.
They might have morphed into two phases, which is Mecca and Medina. This might be the
Mhm.
later mistake, but it's because they are two authors. You see?
Actually, the idea of a Meccan Quran and a Medinan Quran are mistakes at first because there was no Mecca, but also because when you really look into it, what you find you also find in the so-called Meccan verses injection to violence, such as you
Yes.
find in Medina. So they are in this aspect they are not that different. But I fully agree on the difference of genres, so the poetry and so on. Um, but you speak from the point of view of the one who knows very well the Arabic text. So it's a bit different from my point of view. Um, I've read lots of scholars who specialize in Aramaic apocalyptics, for example, and who recognized Aramaic apocalyptics in lookalike in the Quran, or who recognized Jewish and Christian apocrypha and so on. And so, from this scholar point of view, there are many, many, many different types of texts in the Quran. There are prayers, narratives, homilies, influences from Christianity, Aramaic Christianity, from Judaism also. There are Ethiopian words, Persian words, Aramaic words, and so on. But from the strictly speaking, from an Arabic point of view, it's a bit different, and I think it's due to the fact that the Arabic dictionaries that you used, they are based on the Arabic language, of course, but the Arabic language was mostly, not mostly, but was developed thanks to Islam and its interpretation of the Quran. The interpretation of the Quran, the Islamic narrative imposed words in the Arabic language that were not completely Arabic at first. And you already talked a bit about this, but this is very interesting to consider how the development of Islam shaped the very language of the Arabic language. There
The
are
two
also
authors,
another,
yeah,
yeah, excuse me, Murad.
yeah, the two authors in the Quran, one is very concerned with legislation.
Mm-hmm,
This is the one who wrote Surah 2. And the other person who wrote the final parts, he is very concerned with poetry. This
mm-hmm,
other guy, he doesn't care to break any linguistic barriers
mm-hmm,
just to make it sound nice. So this is just like my conclusion about
mm-hmm.
the Quran.
And thanks to your work, did you also detect some oddities in the text, some passages that could have been added, interpolations, um, or is it sort of fluid and coherent on the
No,
contrary?
I think there are interpolations, but it's with words. Sometimes with just one word, and sometimes you feel like the whole ayah or the whole verse is stuffed in there.
Mm-hmm,
The word Rasulu, for example, I feel in a lot of places this is stuffed, this is extra. When it says Allah wa Rasuluhu, because it makes more sense with Allah only. Wa Rasuluhu and his messenger is stuffed in there. It's
mm-hmm.
added there.
Okay. For example, I know of a French scholar, Jean-Jacques Walter, and he worked with computerized analysis of the Arabic text. And one of his conclusions is that most of the cool say at the beginning of a verse, say this, say that, cool, where are interpolations. They were added to 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 give the impression that God is speaking in the text, directly speaking.
Mm,
Otherwise, without the cool, without the say, one couldn't say that God is directly speaking in the text.
I would agree. I would agree in some parts, like not like maybe some the qul was there, but
In some
other
parts,
parts
yeah.
the qul was stuffed in there.
Mhm. I believe that in some parts the cool was the order given by a religious instructor to a preacher. Say this when you are faced with this difficulty. When someone tells you this, then you have to say this. You see, so
Yeah, yeah. So
parts of the Quran for me are sort
we
of
are close.
mhm.
Our theories now they are close.
Yeah, we are converging.
Yeah.
Parts of the Quran are, in my view, a sort of religious manual, instructions given to an Arabic speaking preacher, an Arab preacher, by a religious master, so that he can urge his Arab audience, to this project of conquering Jerusalem. He urges this Arab and Christian audience to convert to the religion of his master And his master, I think, was from a very small Jewish current, a Nazarene current, so not a Christian current, but Judeo-Christian current, a sort of sect, a cult that wanted to use some Christian Arabs as military auxiliaries for their project of conquering Jerusalem and rebuilding the temples there. And this is
Yeah,
what I got from the study of the Quran, which I did a bit like you did, even though I'm not I'm not on the same level as you on the on the Arabic language. But I used also I relied heavily on concordances like the one I could find in the Corpus Quran website or the Quran Tools also website. And this led me to study key concepts, key themes in the Quran. We already discussed this before video together, but for example, the word Nasara is very, very odd in the Quran. There are 14 occurrences of the verb, plus all the occurrences of the NSR roots, Ansar, supposed to be auxiliary or helper. When you look at it, it's very, very odd that the Islamic interpretation for this, they are supposed to be Christians. But when you really look at it, when you do this this work of concordance and of checking every occurrence of the word with the various context of the verses, you see that it cannot mean Christian. The Nasara, for example, are people of the scripture, and the people of the scripture, we see that they cannot be Christian, they are Jews. They are Jews. So the Nasara are not Christians, they are Jews. And they are different from the Christians. The Christians, actually, in the text, for me, in my opinion, they are not named. There is no reference to the Arabic word for Christian in the Quran, which is very odd. There is no Masih.
I agree with you. Yeah.
The only direct reference to the Christians is the Al-Injil, the people of the gospel. This is the only, there is one occurrence of this expression in the Quran. So I think it refers directly to Christians. But otherwise, Christians are referred to as mushrikun, meaning, according to the Islamic narrative, the mushrikun are supposed to be pagans who worship false deities. But when you really look into the word, the mushrikun are the one who commit shirk. Shirk means associating other gods than God to God. And only Christians do that. When you really look into it, a pagan doesn't know the very concept of the one God. So he cannot associate a lesser God to God. For example, if you take a Greek pagan who worship Zeus and Athena or Aphrodite, he doesn't associate Athena to Zeus or Aphrodite to Zeus. This makes no sense to him. Zeus is not a one God. So he's not associating anything to anything. He's not committing shirk. The only ones that can commit shirk are Christians. Actually, shirk is a condemnation that can only be uttered by a monotheist who thinks that another monotheist is not a pure monotheist.
Yes. Yes. And
And
there were a lot of fights in these days about the nature of Christ and stuff. So the
yeah,
Quran is talking about these
there
people,
were.
I guess.
And when you looked at what the Quran says, that this is nothing new, actually. In the rabbinic or Jewish literature, pre-Islamic literature, there were already accusations of shirk towards Christians, toward Jewish Christians. They were accused of associating Jesus to God, to the one God of the Jews. So the accusation of shirk in the Quran is nothing new. And it can only, in my opinion, relate to Christian. It relates to Trinitarian Christians, which are being accused of not being the true follower of God by other Christians or Jews or other creeds that believe in the one God, but don't believe that Jesus is God. And when you have this in mind, and you read the Quran with the good interpretation, the good meaning, the actual meaning, there is a whole different story that that unfolds. And this is the story you talked about a bit. This is a story I think is true. This is the one I have put in the Great Secret of Islam. The story of an alliance between a small Judeo-Christian current, so the Nazarenes, and some Christian Arabs. An alliance that aimed to conquer Jerusalem, rebuild its temple, and trigger the end of times. And I would be very, very interested with your opinion on my work, and I really look forward to it. So next thing you have to do just after you finish your translation is read my book and give me your
Yes, for
opinion.
sure. Yeah.
And we will do then a video on your channel, and you will be interviewing me. But
Yes, for sure.
as a conclusion, I wanted to ask you some question about the way Muslims sees the Quran. And how do you think, for example, your translation will be met by Muslims?
Oh, they will ridicule it, of course. They will laugh at it. But I think any solid work, people will laugh at it for some time. Then, as I keep explaining and showing why I chose such words, then other people who are Christian polemics and stuff, they will use it. Then it will be part of the discourse on YouTube in the future. So I think it will start, they will just ridicule it at first, of course.
Yes, this is the classic quotation. I think it's of Gandhi. At first, you are being ridiculed, then they fight you, then you prevail, something like this. But don't you think that the fact that you are an ex-Muslim prevents Muslim from reading your work with a fresh mind, an objective mind? Because you
Yeah,
are an
but
ex-Muslim, they will automatically think that what you say, what you write is anti-Islam, anti-Muslim.
yeah, this is something that I really cannot fix. So I will not do anything about it. I will just show them that I'm sincere, and whenever they ask a
Mhm.
question, I'll just answer to the best of my ability in the linguistic sense, and that's
But
it.
the
So
one thing you can do, and I think you already do it, is just be friendly to Muslim, not do not insult Islam vainly and so on.
yeah,
And this way, they would see that you're a sincere guy, and it's only about the Arabic language. You
exactly,
could present your work this way. It's not about religion; it's about the Arabic language.
exactly. There is one point that I don't want to forget. I have written it for you. The word in the Quran, Yahud, which means Jews, there
Mhm,
is also the word الذين هادوا, and
mhm,
this means the Judaizers. So these are people who Judaized,
mhm,
and I found that there is also a sect, just like there are the Nazarenes, there are these Judaizers. So it might be that the Nazarenes also had a friendly relation with other weird kind of Jews, which are Judaizers. So I thought
mhm.
to tell you this, maybe it would be of good use because they
Yeah,
always translate
I
الذين
knew
هادوا as
the
Jews,
I
which
knew
is
the
wrong.
expression. I think it relates to ancient Judaism. You see, we tend to consider Judaism according to what it is today, according to rabbinic Judaism standards and its narrative also. But in the ancient Judaism, before the destruction of the temple, and even during the first centuries, it was possible to become a Jew. No, nowadays, you can be Jew only by your mother. You can convert to Judaism, but it takes years, and you really you cannot be a fully fledged Jew unless you have Jewish children, unless you marry a Jewish woman, and even in this way, you are not a complete Jew. But in the first centuries, you could convert to Judaism. There were many Jews from the nations, as they were called, or proselytes, and especially in Arabia. In Arabia, there were many ethnic Arab people who converted to Judaism, who became Jew, fully fledged Jews, complete Jews. So they went to the pilgrimage to Jerusalem, for example, and they abided by Moses' law. They were Jews. You see, Islam, and especially now in the modern times, have developed a racial way of seeing religion. I don't think in the ancient time race was so important. Um, of course, it was important to be part of the chosen people, but it was not a race as we see it today, with racism and racist concepts in mind. You could become a Jew in the ancient times, and you could then be part of Judaized tribes. And we have many sources from the first centuries telling us about Judaized Arabs. Sozomenus, for example, speaks about Arabs that were Judaized in Palestine and believed they were the descendants of Ishmael, for example. And so here the Quran only corroborates the findings of scholars and historians about the existence of Judaized population. Aladina Yahud, Aladina Huda. What is the exact?
الذين هادوا. I
Aladina
just saw
Hadu.
that it's interesting to tell the English speaking audience that this word means those who have Judaized because
Mhm,
it is never translated this way in English. It's just the
mhm.
Jews, which is not correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just another question for you, Murad, is do you think Muslim could be able one day to develop would be able to develop a critical view of the Quran?
I think in the Islamic world, it's progressing, but it's very, very slow. Like today, Muslims they have no problem speaking about the standard Islamic narrative not being 100% correct. And today, they also have no problem saying that the scientific miracles in the Quran are not correct.
Hmm.
So progression is happening in the Islamic world, but because the nature of this religion is very close and
Hmm.
stubborn, so progression is slow. It will remain slow, but it's going in the right direction uh, as we keep going on.
Um,
And this what we are doing. This is a much better approach to understanding Islam than the classical.
Using
Muhammad
the
was
Arabic language.
with Satan and
Mhm.
this stuff.
Because when you are confronted with criticism from a Muslim telling you you are wrong in your interpretation, because you only used Arabic language, you didn't refer to infidel stuff. It's
Yeah,
only about Arabic, so you can always refer the critics to the Arabic language and the Arabic dictionaries.
exactly. And this is what I will be doing for
Mhm.
sure.
But I have an anecdote about this. I had the chance to meet Sami Aldib. Uh, It was something like 10 or 12 years ago in Paris. He was giving a lecture about his translation of the Quran in French. It's all about translating the Quran. You might know him. He's living in Switzerland. He's a Swiss citizen now, but he comes from Palestine, from a Christian background, but he's an atheist. He's not a Christian. And he used to give Arabic lessons in Morocco to Moroccan students, and all of them were Muslims, of course. And so he taught them Arabic, and he was using excerpts from the Quran without telling them it was from the Quran. And he had an exercise, he had them made an exercise. So take this text and correct all the mistakes, all the grammar, or all the oddities and in the text. And so all the students did the work, and they found many mistakes and so on. And thereafter, he told them, you know what? What you just corrected was the Quran itself. And all of his students said, so no, 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 give us back our papers. Please give back the papers because it cannot be. There was no mistake. We want to correct what we have written. Yeah, and this anecdote is very interesting because it tells us about the depths of the indoctrination. Even though they know the Arabic in the text to be wrong, in some of the passages of the Quran, you will agree there are many mistakes. They cannot, because of Islam, they cannot realize it. They cannot accept it. And
Yeah,
so
this is
there's
the
a long
reality.
way to go for critics for Muslim to develop a critical view of the Quran.
This is the reality is that the indoctrination is on another level. So
Mhm.
the best thing is just to talk linguistically, and this is what I am doing. Um, and this is not just, I'm not trying to make people leave Islam. I'm just very curious, like a detective. And if someone will ask me anything, I'll just answer in the most sincere way possible. And that's just it.
Mhm.
I'm just curious to know the truth.
Mhm. Okay. Murad, thank you a lot. Thanks a lot. But I won't finish this interview without asking you how can the audience um, get a copy of your translation?
Yeah, well, the link is in the description, but this is for the free sample of my translation. So people will say, well, maybe we do not want the free sample, we just want the whole thing. Well, you will have to download the free sample so
Mhm.
that you be on my email list.
Okay.
So once the full translation is out, I will be emailing the person the link to my translation so that he can buy it and download it. But it
Okay.
is PDF and Kindle, and it is not a physical copy. So there is no physical copy for this
Okay.
work. Maybe in the future, I don't know.
People
But
will have to print it themselves.
yeah, and
Okay.
it will be ready maybe. I said August, but now I think maybe by September, in the very beginning of September.
Mhm.
So they should download the free sample and tell me what they think of it.
Okay. And you also have buy me a coffee page for people who want to support your work.
Yeah,
Um,
but this is optional. But
this is
downloading
optional,
the
but
sample, this is not optional.
I strongly recommend to everyone to support Murad's work because it is a groundbreaking work. It will change a lot of things. So Murad, thank you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I have just one final word I want to say. Je suis très content de parler avec vous.
Merci Murad.
So
Merci
this
beaucoup.
I took 3 days to to memorize this.
So for the non-French speaking, Murad just said he was very happy to speak with me. And je suis très content aussi. I'm very happy too. I'm very happy also to maybe make other videos with you. And we are all waiting for your translation to be released. Thank you, Murad.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much. Bye bye.